They mocked the wound I was begging God to heal. Every year, Peninnah reminded me of what I did not have: a child, a son, a reason to stop feeling empty. We have met women who waited. Sarah waited 90 years. Rachel cried, "Give me children or I will die." Leah named her sons after her pain. But today, we meet a woman whose waiting was different. It wasn't quiet. It wasn't dignified. It was raw, ugly. The kind of grief that makes you stop eating. The kind of desperation that drives you to a temple where you pray so fervently, so brokenly, that the priest thinks you've had too much wine. Her name was Hannah. And before she became the mother of the prophet who would anoint kings, she was just a woman who wept and would not eat. This is her diary. Entry 1. The Other Wife. I want to tell you about Peninnah, not because she deserves the space, but because you need to understand the air I was breathing. Elkanah had 2 wives. It was common in those days. It was my world. Peninnah had children. I did not. And Peninnah, year after year, at every time we went up to worship at Shiloh, made sure I knew it. The scripture says she provoked me severely. She wasn't careless with her cruelty. She was deliberate. She chose the feast days, the times we were supposed to celebrate God's goodness, to remind me of my humiliation. Then there was Elkanah. He loved me more than words. He would see me weeping and say, "Hannah, why don't you eat? Am I not better to you than 10 sons?" He meant it as comfort. I heard it as, "Your grief is an insult to my love." He could not fix this. Love cannot fix everything. A woman desperate for a child cannot be talked out of her ache by a husband who doesn't understand what it cost to want something this badly for this long. Entry 2. The Temple. I got up. This is the detail I want you to notice. After eating, which means I had not been eating, I got up. I went to the temple at Shiloh. Eli the priest was sitting by the doorpost, but I didn't go to him. I went past him. I stood before God, and I wept. Bitterly. That is the word. Not sadly, not quietly. It was the weeping of a woman whose grief had curdled into something that burns. I prayed in the place beneath language, in the place where pain lives before it becomes sentences. I made a vow. Lord Almighty, if you will only look on my misery and remember me, if you give me a son, I will give him back to you for all the days of his life. I wasn't asking for a child to keep. I was asking for a child to give back. I was so desperate for God to see me that I was willing to surrender the very thing I was asking for. This isn't a transaction. This is a surrender. Entry 3. The priest and the drunken woman. Eli watched me. I didn't know it. I wasn't praying for an audience. Then he spoke. How long are you going to stay drunk? Put away your wine. Think about that. I had come to the house of God in the deepest grief of my life, and the man whose job it was to recognize the Spirit thought I was a drunkard. Have you ever been at your most genuine, your most real, and had someone misread you completely? Had someone looked at your deepest prayer and called it something shameful? I did not collapse. I looked at him and said, "Not so, my Lord. I am a woman who is deeply troubled. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord." I named it clearly, without apology. I am not drunk. I am desperate. Eli looked at me, and then he said, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked." Something shifted. I went away and I ate. My face was no longer downcast. The prayer hadn't been answered yet. The child wasn't there, but I had been heard. And for the first time in years, that was enough. Entry 4, Elkanah. I have been hard on Elkanah. He wasn't a bad man. He was just a man who saw me and couldn't bear to leave me alone in my grief. The truth is, my longing wasn't a verdict on his love. It was its own separate ache. We rose early. We worshiped together. We went home. And then the Lord remembered me. 3 words that changed everything. The Lord remembered Hannah, not in a dramatic storm, but in the quiet after the surrender. Hannah went home. In due time, she conceived and bore a son. She named him Samuel, which means heard by God. She named him after the moment in the temple, not the moment of birth, because for Hannah, the hearing was the miracle. The son was simply the proof. But the story doesn't end with the nursery. Next time, we watched Hannah do the most extraordinary thing any mother in the Bible ever did. She keeps her vow. She takes the child she begged for and leaves him at the temple. If you are in a season of weeping and you feel misunderstood even by those closest to you, remember Hannah. You are not forgotten. You are being heard. Subscribe and come next week for part 2. Share this with a woman who needs to know that her silent prayers are reaching the throne.